everyone, I'm Justin from Free-Clep-Prep, and 2 weeks ago I took the Western Civilization 1 CLEP. Let's talk about how that went and what you can expect if this CLEP is on your list to take. First off, we have this on our difficulty list as a solid 3, and I think that still holds true. The challenge was the same as when I took this CLEP almost 20 years ago. It's a history test, so it boils down to a lot of memorization, and there is a lot of potential things to remember. Our free study guide for this exam has hundreds of topics, and it's frustrating for me because I know you may only see a fraction of those on your exam, but you need to know all of them because you never know which fraction it'll be. I'd rather you be overly prepared than underprepared for this one. The good news is that the fact sheet is relatively accurate about the time periods and geographical areas you can expect to see. What I found most interesting was that the questions tended to be all together as well. So I'd get a lot of questions on Greece early on, then Rome, then Western Europe. That was nice because it lets you stay in that same mental headspace with each area. You weren't bouncing between Pericles, Calvin, and Caesar one after the other. Or maybe I just got lucky in that regard. Now let's talk specifics. My usual disclaimer will apply that I'm not going to tell you any specific questions I see on the exam because that's against the rules from College Board. Instead, I'm going to go over some things that you'll need to study. And let's use the fact sheet again here. Ancient Near East. You can think of this section as the early civilization area. People like the Sumerians, Akkadians, Assyrians, and Babylonians. I know what each of them was like and how they contributed to civilization. Were they warlike? Did they have a legal system? If so, what was it like and who did those laws apply to? How did they communicate? You'll notice this part only makes up about 10% of the exam, so there's no need to go deep, just be able to talk about all of them. Ancient Greece is where you'll need more detail. I'd understand how the early city-states were formed. Each city-state tended to have its own way of doing things politically and socially, and you'll need to understand those. Religion also varied among them and wasn't as universal as we tend to think about Greek mythology today. They also fought amongst themselves a lot. Know the different wars that happened, and you'll probably want to know some of the battles as well. Know the results of those wars and how long the peace lasted, and whether it was Athens' turn to run things or someone else's. About the only time the city-states weren't fighting amongst each other was whenever they were fighting against somebody else, like the Persians. Know about those wars as well, and don't neglect the Persians themselves. Understanding their empire and the way they did things will help you on the exam in many ways. The Greek section runs all the way into the Hellenistic era with Alexander the Great's conquests. I wouldn't stress too much about the details of his wars, but I would understand how Greece changed during this time and how it affected the other areas of the world he conquered, even after his death. Next, we're rolling into Rome, and again, this could be its own test. Know its political structure and the changes it made from its early roots into a republic, and then the rise of the oligarchs, then consuls, and ultimately the emperors. Know who the enemies of Rome were, such as Carthage in the early days or the Visigoths later on. Know the battles that impacted Rome, the adoption of Christianity, and the factors that led to the ultimate breakup into the Eastern and Western Roman empires. For the medieval history portion, the Roman Catholic Church has a large part to play. We're getting into the early Crusades here, so Islam starts making an appearance, as do the Mongols, the Orthodox Church. I know how the political systems operated during this time and how the consolidation of power into the various dynasties impacted the formations of town and the everyday life of the people. You will need to know the main players during this time, such as Charlemagne and the various popes that were starting to flex their political muscle. Don't neglect Western Europe either, as I'd read up on the Saxon conquest, the later Norman conquest, and how England came into its own during this time. The Renaissance and Reformation are pretty self-explanatory. Know who started to chafe underneath the church's rules and why. Things like indulgences and corruptions were making people like Martin Luther and John Calvin angry. I would spend some time learning about them and the people who followed them, as well as how the church responded. I'd also spend some time understanding the broader political landscape during this period, as there were various wars, treaties, and more wars. Constantinople fell during this time period, and France and England were going at it constantly, so I'd know what the War of the Roses and other conflicts were about, and the treaties that ended them. Finally, we have the early modern Europe area, which is, you can think of as like the Age of Exploration. This is when various expeditions to the Americas were happening, as well as the formations of groups like the Dutch East India Company, which became like mini kingdoms in their own right. We also have more conflicts, such as the Italian Wars, and then in France between the Catholics and the Huguenots. As you can see, there's a lot of info to cover on this exam, and we've only touched a little pieces of it. We do have everything on that we mentioned here and more on our free study guide, flashcards, and full-length practice test at Free-Clep-Prep, and you can find a link to that below. I'm confident that if you go through our free material, you'll be well on your way to a passing score on this exam because it worked for me. We do have Quick Prep Bundle available for this test as well, but it's mainly for those who need to prepare quickly or want additional ways to study. If you have the time, the free study guide has everything the bundle does. The bundle will be free for the first 2 days after this video drops, so people can help me spot any bugs. If you subscribe to the channel, you'll get notified when other bundles are created and are available for free. Now, related to study material, the question has come up already about modern states and whether their final for this particular CLEP is a good representation of the real thing. As is usually the case, I found their final to be much easier than the actual CLEP. In terms of topic coverage, I'd say their test for the Western Civ 1 will get you about 20 to 30% of the way towards passing the CLEP itself. Their video lectures are usually more comprehensive, but I would not suggest using only the test to gauge your readiness. By all means, get your free voucher, but be sure just to supplement your study. This was on the longer side for a CLEP review, but I hope you learned some things and are better prepared for your exam. I think I'll be taking the Introductory Psychology CLEP again next, so keep an eye out for the next video where I'll cover that one. Wishing you all the best on your exams as always, and I'll see you again soon.